So here we are. Welcome to the course. I'm super excited to bring this to you. I genuinely believe if you follow everything in the course with a bit of effort and a good work ethic, you will have huge success in the service accommodation arena and be able to build yourself a very profitable service accommodation business. Course number one is just touch on base on service accommodation, what it is. It's a beginner's guide really for service accommodation. As we go through the courses, we'll get more in depth. So what is serviced accommodation? In essence, it's a short-term rental strategy using property. So rather than using property for tenants, as is commonly known, we use it to host guests. Guests will be those staying in the area. Pretty much anybody that would normally book a hotel, we would be looking for them to book our properties instead. Typically, it's a house or a flat, and it is furnished. We've got to put everything in there that you would find in a hotel, and sometimes more with obviously having kitchens. Most hotels don't have kitchens, so we have to supply kettles, toasters, washing up liquid, that sort of stuff as well to make them tick along. The guests do expect a hotel-like experience, so you have to be maintaining your properties highly. You have to offer the service that you're pitching online on your adverts. The properties have got to look like your adverts. You know, they've got to walk in and feel like they've booked the right place. They've booked the standard that they are accustomed to, and you know your place delivers exactly what it says on the tin, really. Now, the main booking channels, you may or may not have heard of them: Airbnb, Booking.com, TripAdvisor. There's many more, which again we'll come on to in the course: Trivago, HomeAway, Flipkey. So, but they're all basically free advertising platforms to an extent. You only actually pay when you get a booking, so you don't have to actually shell any money out up front to get the bookings. Obviously, they do charge a commission, and quite a hefty one at that, when you do get a booking. But at the end of the day, you only pay them when they pay you, or when you get a booking off your guests. So it is a great strategy. It's a great platform, and it's easy to get involved because of this reason, because there's so many booking platforms out there driving business to your service accommodation units. So who are the customers? We call them guests, because they are guests. They're not tenants. They're short-term people staying in your mini hotels, I like to call them, but staying in your houses. Typically, companies housing employees on work trips, they're the biggest, I would say, percentage share of what we rent out on a week-by-week basis. It is much cheaper for a company to book a house or a flat where they can house 4, 6, 8, 10 people than it is to book twin rooms in a hotel, or even a room each in a hotel. Plus, when you start getting into service accommodation and you start having the conversations with the guests, especially the workers, you'll understand their mindset. These guys work away from home a lot. They don't really want to be in hotels. They don't want to be in hotel bars. They just want to come home and have a cozy lounge kitchen that works, where they can cook what they want, eat what they want. You know, they don't have to be downstairs eating the greasy food from the hotel, drinking 5-10 pints, or these guys just want an easy life, and they're great for us. We save the company money by offering them basically more beds for cheaper, for less money, and they are happier. There's no doubt about it. Their employees are happier. Their employee satisfaction goes up. So it's a win-win for everybody, and that's why it really works. Obviously, you've got your weekend traffic, and well, not just weekend traffic, especially in sort of the summer season as well. You get your friends going away for the weekend. Don't get me wrong, you will, depend on your cities, but stag do's, hen do's. I've got no problem with stag do's and hen do's. Our contract and our verification process clearly lays down the law. We take damage deposits up front, and touch wood, we haven't had too many issues. So I've got no problem with people staying. You get football traffic. If you've got a city with a big football stadium, a lot of traveling fans coming, or if you've got big concert arenas, those type of things, those are the type of people that can stay on a weekend, going away with friends, etc. Families visiting the area tends to be around sort of the Christmas break or the summer holiday season, where you get a lot more families staying, obviously visiting areas to come and see other friends and family, or they might just be having a staycation instead of going away on holiday. So you know, these bookings are great in the summer because they also tend to be more nights than the average. So I think we probably average 3 or 4 nights across the portfolio. These guys can stay for 7 to 10 nights. Obviously reduces your cleaning bills, reduces your linen bills, and increases your profits. And then there's everything in between, some good and some bad. You know, service accommodation isn't just all glorious sunshine, loads of profit, no hassle at all. But you know, it is a good strategy. So don't let this put you off. But there are criminals doing the circuits on Airbnb using fake credit cards to stay in the areas. We've had a bad experience recently where they managed to get through the Airbnb verification system and also break our system, and stayed in one of our places. Eventually, the police ran after they'd stayed for 8 days, found out that there were a bunch of guys basically going around Newcastle robbing things on a night, breaking into houses, and then they disappeared off to another city, used a stolen credit card to check in, etc., etc. So, you know, you got to be careful. Prostitutes, it is a thing at the minute. They'd rather stay in Airbnb places than hotels. It's easier for them. It's more off the radar. And unfortunately, you do just get some people with total lack of respect for, you know, what you're doing for them by giving them a nice place to stay, and you know, they just treat it with utter disrespect and leave. We've had doors left open, and you know, just places abused, and you know, just mess everywhere. Nothing that the cleaners probably definitely haven't sorted out, because we do get them turned around again. It's just the hassle of sorting it out. But unfortunately, these are the people. Now, I always tell my staff it's an 80-20 rule. You know, 80% of the people that come through will be good, and 20% of the people, we just have to accept that, you know, this is what they are. But as long as you've got enough protection in place, you've got insurances in place, then financially there is very little damage. Why get into serviced accommodation? Most people, it's for the money. You know, I'm not going to lie, that's exactly why I did. I started with a 1-bed flat, and you know, I think it typically should rent out for about 450, 475 a month. You know, we on average probably pull 1,300-1,400 quid gross rent out that same flat in some of the months where, you know, we've got Great North Run, because it's very near the Great North Run start line. I've got 2 nights booked out for £750. You know, so in September next year we'll surpass probably £2,000 on that 1-bed flat. You know, the money that you can earn by doing it right is far superior to rentals. I call it, you know, call it super rent. So you've got your rentals, which is your normal tenants, and you've got super rent, which is service accommodation or HMOs. It's just maximizing the revenue you can get from each property. So these are just some examples. You know, we've got, if we top left there, £510, that was for a 2-bed terrace house in Leamington, that is, and that's for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 nights. Again, that property would rent out for about £400 a month. So in 11 nights, we've already earned more, and we've still got, depending on the month, 20-ish nights left to book out. You know, we've got £609 there. I believe that's for the 3-bed terraced end of terrace house that we've got. Again, I think the rent on that would be about £500 a month. So, you know, we've got a few nights booked out there. We've got, you know, we do have some bigger properties which bring in some great bookings. You see there, 2 nights, 15th of October, £915. You know, that place does sleep up to 14 people. It's a 5-bed story, 3-story townhouse, and it works very well for us. Spacious, homely home in a quiet street. That's a 3-bed end of terrace, £857 for 7 nights. So a great strategy, and you can make a lot of money from it if you do it right. But you need to make sure that you're educated and you do it right, because you can lose a lot of money as well if it's not done properly. The last thing you want is double bookings, or your property's breaking down and you've got to go and put tenants in, into hotels, or you've got to put them into other people's serviced accommodation units and pay bills. Why would you not want to get into serviced accommodation? I mean, these are just some of the pictures of some of the properties that we've had damaged. The bottom right one was the one with the criminals, which obviously they could drink quite a bit of beer as well. You do have to laugh at times. You know, as I said, as long as you're protected, then, you know, financially there is no no sort of downside. You've just got to make sure you're doing the job right. Top left picture there, that was some kids decided to have a beer fight, obviously a bit drunk one night, splash beer all over the wall, so we had to get the decorators in. But again, we took damage deposits, so this to fix any of this mess didn't cost us a penny. All it cost was time and effort. And I think out of them all, the one with the beer fight was the only time we've ever had to shut a property down. So we had to close that for 3 days so the painters could actually get in there. So but again, this is part of doing serviced accommodation. There's downsides to renting out to tenants as well. You got your voids, they decide not to pay, but then still live in the place. You don't have that with serviced accommodation. You get paid up front before the stay and you take damage deposits. So 9 times out of 10, you are covered. How do you get into serviced accommodation? So there's various ways. You can own a property and flip the usage. This is how I started. So we had a buy-to-let property portfolio, and we decided to. It was more out of chance why I did it, but I had a flat and I couldn't get it rented out, so I decided to try it on Airbnb. I fully furnished it, I kitted it out, and all of a sudden the bookings started bleeping through, and I was excited. And I thought there's something in this, so I then started testing a few other properties as they came back off. We refurbished them and put them into the right condition that they needed to be to compete. And again, they all just kept getting booked. So now we only pretty much predominantly buy for serviced accommodation, and we buy with that in mind, and that is our strategy. You can rent a property and use it for serviced accommodation, as long as obviously you get the landlord's permission. So we again have this strategy in our portfolio as well. So you can acquire a lot more properties by renting them. At the end of the day, I could agree a rental today and I could move in tomorrow. Whereas if I am buying a property, I could agree that today. It might be 2 months before I actually get the keys for it. So you can move a lot quicker by renting. Obviously, you're going to pay more rent than you are a mortgage. But as long as the figures work out and the unit's going to generate profit each month, then it's a great strategy. It's a great cash flowing strategy. You can buy a property and set it up from the start from service accommodation. Briefly touched on that before. So, we owned our own properties and flipped them into usage. We buy our properties now and buy them with the intention of serviced accommodation. We rent them off landlords and flip them into serviced accommodation. And the final strategy, again, we do this as well. We manage properties for landlords and we run them as a serviced accommodation, taking a percentage of the turnover. So just a bit like an estate agent will run a tenanted property. Because we've got the systems and processes in place already for our own serviced accommodation units, we can just plug as many units in as possible, and then we just, the cleaners go to those units on those days. We use this, the linen goes to those units on those days, the consumables, the guest management, everything it just fits into the same model. So we can manage, we own, and we rent. So we now have a good diversification in terms of the portfolio, but it's all based around serviced accommodation. And as you grow and as you build your own service accommodation business, I would strongly recommend to have this in the back of your mind at all times, is, making sure you can leverage absolutely each avenue that you can to make profit at the end of the day, because that's what it's about. So what properties work for service accommodation? For me, pretty much anything. I think, these are just some of the properties that we have got in our portfolio, and as you can see, there's nothing glamorous about them. Some of the high-rise quayside flats might be a bit more appealing, but these are just either 2-bed flats or 3-bed houses, bungalows. Any property works. For me, it's more about how you position yourself in terms of the refurbishment. How well are you going to do it up, and how are you going to compete with all the other properties in the market? And probably location is more important than property type. Why choose service accommodation as a strategy? Service accommodation is a business. It's not just a property strategy. So if you want to get into service accommodation, for me, you're setting up a business. You're becoming an entrepreneur. You have every intention of making it a business and not just a property strategy. For me, I really enjoy working with people. I enjoy bringing people on. So for me, I get a lot of satisfaction out of growing a team around me, which we've done. over the years, building our service accommodation business. So we've got some great people, and to be honest, I wouldn't have the success that we have if I didn't have these people around us. It just wouldn't happen. The cleaner's been the most important piece of the puzzle, and it's not very often that cleaners will get rave reviews, but I'm telling you now, service accommodation cleaners are your lifeblood. You've got to have a good cleaning team, or the whole thing falls down quite quickly. You get to employ people and help them enhance their lives. So, we have created a business, we've created jobs for people, we're putting money into their back pockets, so it's a great strategy for doing that. A standard landlord necessarily won't have any staff unless they've got a huge portfolio. They typically run it themselves, probably up to, or they pay an estate agent maybe. But we're constantly feeding other people and good amounts of money as well. But then we can still make some good profit, and more profit than if we were doing it on a tenant basis. It's a growing industry. You just got to look at the stats on the right there. It is a growing industry. Airbnb is, I believe they're about to do an IPO and list on the stock exchange. So they're not going away. Booking.com's not going away. Expedia is growing. This industry is, for me, is growing, and I think we've got a good 5, 10, possibly even 15 years ahead of us before there's going to be any real change. But I just can't really see the change. I think there'll be regulations come in, but as long as you're doing everything above board, I don't see any issues with that. I've certainly got no issues with regulations coming in. I actually think it benefits the good operators and it gets rid of the poor ones, and then that means less competition, and obviously we can benefit from that. Eventually it will create a passive income. Don't get me, I think you've got to work the business at the beginning to make sure you know exactly how it all works, and then you can decide how you want to piece your team together to make your life easier. So for me, I ran the first 3 by myself. That was guest messaging, it was sorting the cleaners out, it was absolutely everything. And then at that point I thought, well, I didn't get into this to be sort of a guest messenger or a sort of instructing cleaners, etc. So what pieces of the puzzle do I have to put together so I can then focus on building the business, acquiring more properties and doing the deals, which is the part I like. But by working in it, I knew everything, and I could teach, okay, well, this is what you've got to do when this happens, this is what you've got to do when this happens. And those people below me now, are part of my team. We work with them every day, and they allow me to be able to grow the business by doing an efficient job, the jobs that I don't necessarily want to do. So it can, I could totally step away from it now and, just collect the money each month. That would happen. Everything is in place to make that happen. But I personally still really enjoy getting involved in the business and seeing how we can make it better every single day. So the pros and the cons. Pros: increased profit. For sure, this is an increase. You definitely will make more money doing it this way than renting out to tenants. You have an easy entry into the property, so you can do rent to service accommodation, which is what I touched on before, whereby you rent property off a landlord and then you use it as a service accommodation unit, or obviously managing. You don't necessarily have to own the properties to get into this strategy. It can be a passive income. As I said, you can step out of the business once it's fully set up and just collect the money if need be. For me, it's very enjoyable. I do think it's an enjoyable business. You can be your own boss and you can help others and build a team, which for me is important as well. Cons: it is a lot more time consuming than a normal sort of landlord's property portfolio type business, where maybe they speak their guests once or twice a month, probably around rent day when they're reminding them they've got rent coming up or they're chasing them for rent. But this can be time consuming. There are a lot of moving parts in the service accommodation business, and you've got to have your finger on the pulse to make sure that it's working. It is a lot more hassle. I think whilst a tenant might ring you and ask you to change a light bulb every now and then, guests are very demanding. They expect a hotel experience. If you don't give them that hotel experience, you've got to, probably deal with complaints, and they're always trying to get compensation. So it's fighting that battle all the time as well. So there is a bit more hassle involved in doing it, but do you trade that hassle for more profit? For me, the answer is yes. So I've got no issue with it. I just accept it and we work through it. A lot can go wrong quite quickly. Obviously, I mentioned before, there's a lot of scammers moving through sort of the service accommodation business. They see it as an easy opportunity to get a free stay, move around cities, do what they do best. So you've just got to be careful. You can also get stuck in the wrong properties that don't work. If you're doing rental deals, you end up paying high rents. You're not making the money, and all of a sudden you're losing money. You know, that's definitely what we don't want to happen. Your properties can get damaged, but you know, so can tenanted properties for me. So I don't mind that. I'll take that risk on. I think as long as you've got everything in place, you've got card details for damage deposits, etc., then it doesn't actually cost you any money to get them back, to get them back into shape. Obviously, I've touched base on losing money as well. If you don't do it properly, you will lose money, that's for sure. So a few things to consider. If you're switching your current portfolio, so if you're already a landlord and you've got a portfolio and you want to switch it, or you want to buy for serviced accommodation, just a few points to really consider. Your mortgage lenders, there's not that many lenders out there at the minute that are SA friendly. So you need to check your terms and conditions of your mortgages if you are going to flip it in the strategy, and maybe have a conversation with your mortgage lenders. If you're buying for SA, there are mortgage products out there. Speak to your mortgage brokers and make sure it is an SA friendly mortgage, because the last thing you want is them calling the loan in once they find out you're doing service accommodation. Insurance providers, they're the same. So we work with a great broker, and because we've got the portfolio now, it's a lot cheaper. At the beginning, it was a lot more expensive than a normal tenancy insurance. But for me, the extra money that you were paying for the insurance, you were getting back tenfold in the profits. So it didn't really matter as such. But as we've grown the portfolio, our insurance has come down, which is great. But again, you've got to make sure the insurance covers for serviced accommodation, because it's a lot different to a normal tenancy. And the last thing you want to happen is something happens, you haven't switched your insurance over, or you haven't got the right insurance in place, and they don't pay out. Leasehold leases. There are so many leasehold leases. It's not a simple case of, well, a block of flats does do it, or this type of property doesn't do it. You've got to read every lease. You've got to check that there's no covenants in there to say that you can't do short-term lettings. Your current tenants, if you're looking to switch your portfolio, do you let them just ride to the end of the term and then you decide to go service accommodation, or do you serve them notice, kick them out, refurbish your property if need be, get it furnished, and then start renting it? As I say, again, that's a decision for you. You know your tenants better than we will. So, make the decision, work the numbers out, see if it's a viable option for you. Refurbishment costs. Most of the properties we now do cost us a bit more to refurbish, because we get them up to a nicer standard, just to make sure that we're competing, offer this sort of luxury mini hotel offering. Furniture costs, you don't tend to have them with tenanted properties, but you will have to furnish your properties, even down to sort of pizza cutters and bottle openers, fairy liquid. You've got to put every single item of furniture in there, to make sure that the guests have got everything. Neighbours, whilst you can pretty much do what you want with your own properties, I do think you should always respect your neighbours. We have a clause in the contract, and we also send them an email 2 days before they're about to check in, firmly stamping down that there's no parties allowed. If we do find you having parties, we'll come and sort of kick you out. Touch wood, we've not really had too many issues. At the end of the day, a tenant could stay up late on a Saturday night and be a bit noisy. We have had a few complaints, but nothing that we couldn't sort out, and nothing that was lasting damage. So just be mindful of your neighbours. I think if you're going to get in serviced accommodation, you don't want to be the nightmare landlord. But as long as you've got your contracts in place and your verification processes in place, you should be attracting the right sort of guests, and you shouldn't really have any issues. And a team, you're going to need a team around you. You might not have a team now as a landlord to run your portfolio, but you will need a team around you to run a serviced accommodation business. If you're looking to rent a property and use it for serviced accommodation, then a couple of things to consider. Obviously, the landlord's going to need to consider their mortgage and their insurance. So that's a conversation you need to have. Again, with the leases as well, they're going to have have a look at the leases. You need to have a look at the leases. The last thing you want to do is agree a deal to rent somewhere for a period of time and then find out or get shut down months later, and then you get stuck with that property and that rent. You know, if you are going to be renting the property and use it for service accommodation, you've only got a certain time frame to make the money. So it could be 3 years or it could be 5 years, depending on what you've agreed. Your setup and your refurbishment costs, they need to be paid back. My strategy is no more than 6 months. So for the first 6 months, all the profit that we make from the unit has to cover any setup refurbishment costs. So if we're going to paint the property, or we're going to, you know, put a new bathroom in, or whatever it might be, to make it work as a service accommodation unit, as long as I get the money back in 6 months, that'll give me, you know, 2.5 years if it's a 3-year contract, or, you know, longer, depending on the contract time. But the rest of the time after that 6 months, that's where you're going to make your profit, and then you assess whether that is a viable option or not, and whether that's worthwhile doing. Get insured. Even though the landlord might have insurance, I firmly suggest that you get your own insurance. We've got fully insured for, you know, public liability, professional indemnity. You know, we've got it. We've got everything. So even if the landlord doesn't tell his insurance company, then it doesn't really matter. We can still, if a guest hurts himself in their property under our usage, then we're still covered in case anything happens and they come after you for compensation or whatever it might be. Make sure your contracts are agreed before, obviously, you start. Now, this sounds sort of fairly simple and as though it should just be done naturally, but get on paper the responsibilities. Who's responsible for the boiler? Who's responsible for a leaking tap? Who's responsible if the dishwasher breaks or the washing machine goes? Who's responsible for even if the Hoover breaks? Whatever it might be, get it down on paper, because it's all nicey nice when you're doing deals. At the end of the day, you think you're getting a property, you're excited, they're getting a long-term tenant, they're excited, and you can forget to get into the nitty-gritty. But then 3-4 months down the line, something happens, you're locked into the agreement, they know that they've got you locked into the agreement, and you say, I need you to fix the boiler. They say, that's not my issue, that's your issue. You know, all of a sudden you end up, you know, it's just not good, and it can end up getting a bit nasty, and the whole relationship can break down, which could result in you not having a profitable unit to operate from anymore. So just get everything out on paper at the beginning. Make sure that everything's set in stone. And again, you're going to need a team. So anything to do with service accommodation, you're going to need a team. So be mindful, you know, that you're going to have to start not necessarily employing people. You just got to work with people. So you might have cleaners that you use, sort of a regular cleaner. You might have a linen company that you use. You might have a virtual assistant. You know, you don't always have to employ these people. I think you will, if you grow quick enough and big enough, you will have your own in-house team, because it's more cost effective. But at the start, you'll just outsource. Things to consider if you're managing a landlord's property and running it as a service accommodation. Fairly similar to the last slide. Just, you know, make sure that they check their insurance. Make sure you check their insurance. Make sure you've got insurance in place. The only difference here is make sure your service levels to the landlords are exceptional. You know, we've had many companies, or sorry, many landlords reach out to us and say how poorly their company's done for them, and would we take it over, which obviously we gladly do, because we're confident in what we do. We know we offer and deliver a great service, and everybody's happy. You know, be transparent with them, let them know what's going on, make sure that you're sending your financial reports at the end of the month so they know exactly how much they're earning. You know, just document everything and make sure that they've got a clear picture. Keep them in the loop as much as they want to be kept in the loop. But, you know, I think all landlords want to know what's going on, really. So if there is a little niggle with the property, maybe you should tell them if you feel it's the right thing to do. Obviously, you don't need to be telling them, you know, every time a door handle might get pulled off or whatever it might be. But you know, if there's a neighbor complaining or something, it's worth just making note and letting them know. And then obviously on the figure side of things, just be absolutely transparent. This is how much you've earned. This is what we're going to be paying you this month. This is what your costs were. You know, these are your occupancy levels. This is what we did. Just a brief report at the end of the month. It doesn't take long if you get it all systemized and get it all organized. It's just basically providing information that you've already probably collected the data from, and being able to offer a great service to your landlords. Because one thing's for sure, landlords mix with landlords. Landlords have more than one property, so your network and your property portfolio can quickly grow if you start doing a great job for landlords. So that's it for course number 1, a brief introduction on what serviced accommodation is, if you didn't already know. If you've got any questions, just drop us an email, academy@lukeholmes.co.uk, and we'll get back to you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next course.